Combating Gender-Related Income Disparities in the Athletic Field by Noor Azim. Gender and Athletics. Gender inequality plagues the environment of all workplaces, and it can be noted that women make around 77 cents per dollar that a man earns, even when the labor is of equal value. This inconsistency in the pay of women also translates over to athletes in the sports realm, as according to the Stimulus Material A, Empowering Women Through Sport from the Olympic Review, whether it be prize money, sponsorships, or facilities and equipment allocated to female athletes, there are clear gaps in the allocation of funds and salaries between gender and athletics. Therefore, I presented the research question, how should the cultural phenomenon that allows women in athletic field to experience gender-related income disparities be addressed? Why does this matter? This gap serves as another obstacle in the already difficult process of becoming an athlete, and it hinders the ability of women to have equal opportunity to rise in professional sports. Even when female athletes reach peak success and fame in their individual fields, their pay and recognition doesn't nearly meet the male version of the same achievements. If these disparities persist even at the top, athletes working their way up from the bottom undoubtedly struggle. In grade school, the female teams are often provided less resources, a smaller budget, and little to no publicity. This sets the framework for the low expectations instilled in female athletes, as they learn from a young age that they will not be provided the same opportunities as their male counterparts. In college, the male sports games are promoted to the highest extent and used for the furthering of school spirit, therefore creating a social phenomenon of students only giving importance to male athletic games. By the time athletes are adults and have moved on to the professional sports world, the women are conditioned to persevere around the struggle, while viewers/non-athletes tend to pay attention to or favor male sports games. The cultural phenomenon that allows women in the athletic field to experience gender-related income disparities that persist in the male-dominated sphere of sports needs to be addressed by implementing thorough transparency in the field, both with colleagues, sponsors, and the public. Colleagues. In order to address gender-related income disparities in the athletic field, it is necessary to implement transparency with colleagues. A large part of why women are consistently paid less is that income has become a taboo topic that not many are willing to discuss. This creates an environment where many are unaware that their income is not meeting the standard of their labor, in comparison to those of equal standing in their field. Author Carrie Perez from the Indiana International and Comparative Law Review agrees that the so-called innocence of new athletes is a large factor in the income disparities, as it becomes standard for these women to accept little from early on in their careers. Perez ties this problem to the toxicity that is the secretive nature of their contracts. When athletes are encouraged to stay silent over the minimum salary amounts they are offered, the women stay unaware that they aren't being paid according to their value. Sponsors. What sponsorships an athlete receives greatly depends on media attention and success in the individual sport being played. However, being a female athlete adds another layer to the equation. Sponsors choose athletes depending on what the viewers would like to see, and because of the wide inequality of representation for women in sports, female athletes are chosen at much lower rates. Ivanka Katsarova from the accredited European Parliamentary Research Service discusses how this trend in sponsorships is directly correlated to lack of media coverage for women's sports. When 90% of journalists are men and writing about male athletes 85% of the time, it's obvious why women are lesser known in sports. The lack of quality attention paid to female athletes leads to a less engaged audience, consequently less sponsorships. Public. The public's main role in determining the income of female athletes comes from the viewership statistics they contribute to, of which male sports games overwhelmingly dominate. Viewership not only leads to sponsorships, but also to the amount of prize money attributed to teams or individual athletes. Prize money is a large motivating factor for athletes, as it is a monetary achievement that pays the athletes and helps fund their careers. Katsarova from the EPRS explains that prize money disparities are still very much common. And while the Men's Football World Cup in 2018 was $400 million worth of prize money, women only got $30 million in the 2019 World Cup. Prize money is offered based on sponsorships, media attention, and advertisements, which creates skewed viewership statistics in favor of male sports. Therefore, the public is often indirectly in control of athletes' incomes. Solutions. Legislation to promote the equal distribution of these factors is necessary, and senators like Dianne Feinstein and Sherrod Brown are introducing bills like the Athletics Fair Pay Act to help. This bill requires all Olympic and amateur athletes to be paid equally. The public being educated on matters like this is also necessary, as if they take into account the income inequalities for female athletes the next time they vote, they can support politicians who wish to eradicate the injustices present. A re-evaluation of the education given to the public is the best way to alleviate the inequalities in sport. If people are taught from a young age to watch and respect the sport of both genders equally, then a new generation of avid female athletic viewers could reshape the funding and sponsorships allocated to athletes. Education and public attention towards the gender income disparities in athletics for children and adults would undoubtedly allow the growth of female sports realm. Conclusion. Women in the athletic field to experience the gender-related income disparities that persist in the male-dominated sphere of sports needs to be addressed, and soon. By implementing thorough transparency in the field, both with colleagues, sponsorships, and the public, athletics as a whole can be shifted for the better and move towards a more just future where both men and women expect and deserve equal pay. An increase in sports legislation and athletic education will further this process, creating a shift in fairness for not just athletes but women everywhere. Works cited. Information that I needed that I had difficulty locating was the curriculum in which sports education was taught in standard public schools in the US. So in order to find this information, I took a more cultural approach that centered around how each gender of sports was viewed based on encouragement in grade school. Advice I would have for others researching is that previous legislation involving equal pay for athletes should be looked into thoroughly, and you should see why it didn't work out. By seeing why these previous legislations didn't work out, you can implement the mistakes into your paper by providing solutions for new legislation.